Hello, I'm Commissioner Christy McCormick from the Election Assistance Commission. March is Women's History Month, and as part of the EAC's recognition of this month, I'm interviewing women leaders in elections about their experiences in the field, serving voters across the country. Today, I'm pleased to speak with Jacquelyn Callanen, who is the Elections Administrator in Bexar County, Texas. Hi, Jackie. How are you doing this morning?
Well, good morning. It's great to see you.
Great to see you. And, we had such a great visit back a few years ago. The Standards Board visited your office. Was a fantastic experience for the people who attended. And I've been able to visit you a few times. So I'm excited to be able to interview you for our Women's History Month. So thank you for joining me.
Well, thank you very much. I think if you got to visit us now, you'd see a little bit of a change because we've switched voting systems since y'all have been here.
Oh, okay. Well, maybe we'll have to talk a little bit about that. But let me ask you first, how did your career in public service begin?
Interesting question. I was teaching third grade, and in 1986, somewhere in there, literally over the intercom in the school came a request for any of the teachers who had time that they could take the day off because the election office needed workers for that election. And so it was like, oh, okay. So I got a substitute for that day and stepped into the world of elections. It was in 88. Again, it came over the school intercom, and I took the day off and worked the Bush election, which was really a great experience. And it was rewarding. I mean, for anyone, and we all know you sort of get bitten by the election bug.
But I always say it's kind of like Hotel California. Once you check in, you can never check out again.
That's pretty much it. I mean, you get to share and see these people and see their faces light up as they were actually voting. And so one thing led to another. And then when I had stopped teaching, I entered the election world as an early voting judge. Texas had opened up early voting to people who were going to be out of the county, if they were going to be on vacation. And it was a very small beginning for early voting. And then Texas made the decision to have a no excuse early voting. And as they say, Katie barred the door. Then it became a huge, huge project, very successful project. And we've only grown from them. So as all the different election systems were coming into the natural evolvement of that, Bexar County went to the Scantron, or the tabulated paper ballots. They moved from the punch cards to the paper ballots. And the elections administrator at that time literally called me on the phone and asked if I could come and help, because just plotting to see how many ballots of each of the styles you would need at every early voting site. This was sort of pre-computer and before all the before we had Excel spreadsheets.
Right.
we would literally do it on graph paper. And that was when I came into the office for the first time, and that was in 96. And I've been here ever since.
You're not looking back.
Not looking back.
No more third grade.
That's it. Well, I think third grade would have passed me by, because some of the big challenges in third grade was we taught them how to tell time. And then we went to digital clocks, so they don't need that anymore.
That's true.
And they don't teach handwriting anymore. And that was a big focus of third grade.
So let me ask you, in the elections venue, what are some notable industry changes you've seen since the beginning of your career?
Well, again, I think I've alluded to some of it. I mean, I feel like I've been here to see the entire different spectrum of it. Literally, the first time I voted was on a shoot machine, the good old lever machines.
Oh, yeah.
And then here in Bexar County, they had moved to the punch cards. And so we voted on punch cards for a long time. And as I said, with early voting, we would just swap those cartridges out and people could vote whatever ballot they wanted. Then we moved to the paper ballot, as I said, and that was good and bad, because Bexar County, I think, well, like all election areas have very sundry and different ballot styles.
Mhm.
And I don't think the voters understand quite what that's like. And so when you're from a large county that has over 700 precincts, at times you're going to have over 1,400 different ballot styles that you could have, just laying those on top of each other. And so
We don't all vote on the same ballot.
that's, but a lot of people think that, which
do.
we're really surprised, and we still get that. So we did the paper ballot, and then when it came to about 2002, we switched to all touchscreen. That was when we had the advent of electronic voting.
Right.
And we went with we had Ivotronics, and we had the Ivotronics from 2002 to 2019. We had them for 17 years. And then we moved on to what is now called the blended system, where the voters' experience is much like the touchscreen, but they have the actual ballot card printed out for them. So we've seen it go through that.
Yeah. Yeah. So you talked a little bit about the change in voting systems. What are some of the other changes or initiatives you've implemented in your career?
Two that I'm super, super proud of. Again, here in Bexar County, we refer to ourselves as the City of San Antonio and Military City, USA. And so we started about 8 years ago trying to fill a demand so that our number one voters, the military voters, no matter where they were, had the opportunity to vote. And at that time, we had an awful lot of deployed members that were overseas in hostile fire zones. And so we went to the Texas legislature, and we were able to set up a pilot program for emailed ballots so that we could mail the blank ballot to them so that they could get it safely without having to wait for 2 weeks, 3 weeks, however long the mail delivery would be. And then we had it set up so that we had a proprietary email address back here so that if they were in a hostile zone, they could fax their ballot back to us, or they could email their ballot back to us. And we went through, I don't want to say a number of iterations, but it took until the last session where they opened it up 100% to all of the counties in Texas. And it is just so well received. It's amazing. We do a number, we do 11, 15,000 military ballots, and probably the majority of them, about 75% of them, ask for us to send them to them using the email to cut all that time in half. But again, if they're not in a hostile zone, they have to send it back to us through the US mail.
And I imagine a lot of the military members consider themselves residents of Texas and want to keep that residency. So you probably have military all over the country.
Yes, we do, all over the country and all over the world. And I love that you said that, Ms. Christy, because again, here in Bexar County, we have Lackland Air Force Base, where anyone who joins the Air Force starts and comes here. And again, with Texas being one of the few remaining states with no state income tax, a lot of them keep their home of record here in Texas, as you just said.
Yeah. And you were going to mention another innovation that you or thing that you implemented there that you're very proud of.
Yes, please. Again, we saw the need probably at least 16 years ago, where we were lacking in our assistance for the disabled, for the blind voter, for the hearing impaired voter. And we developed here, literally here in Bexar County, and it served us well for a number of years. We had a program with, if we had a voter who was blind, they could come to the polls early voting or election day. And we wrote a program whereby the election official called the office. We had a special phone number set up, and then handed the phone to the voter. And the voter, the person here, not knowing any names, not knowing their name, not knowing who it was for complete privacy, would read them the ballot.
Mm-hmm.
And the election worker then would stand beside them. And we did not use candidate names so that anyone who would be within earshot would not hear who that voter was voting for. So we would tell them the name, candidate A, candidate B, with the name, and then they would turn to the election worker and say, please mark B.
Mm-hmm.
Please mark. And we would work our way through the ballot. And it was so well received because, again, we listened and we heard the angst that even though they relied on so many of their companions, their caregivers, they wanted that vote to be theirs, to be their private vote, to be secret, for lack of a better term. We use that term. And now they had that. They didn't have to rely on that other person to mark it. And so we were really excited about that. And again, when we had the advent of the electronic voting, now every one of those units had a headset.
Right.
And so it was able to assist. And for the hearing impaired, we went, again, I'm very proud to say, we went outside to a private vendor, and they had a system whereby they were ahead of the times, much like what you and I are doing right now on Zoom. This company called DeafLink has their offices, and 24 hours a day, they have it staffed by someone who uses American Sign Language.
Mm-hmm.
And so we would put a computer out at the sites. And when we had someone who needed it, we turned the screen around, we press the button, and then they interact with the person that's in that office at any time. And they get their assistance, they can ask their questions.
That's right.
The election official, if necessary, would stand behind the voter so that they could make sure they were explaining things to them. And it's been a huge success.
And we still have so much work to do in that area.
Absolutely, absolutely. In fact, as I said, for the visually impaired, we're working with them as we speak, because it feels like a lot of the military email ballot project would be a fit for them.
Mm-hmm.
But if we could email their own ballot to them in such a way that they could use the screen scrapers and that they could actually have it and do it themselves. So that's still we're still down at the very basics of trying to figure that one out. But there's light at the end of the tunnel. We're really
and so many of those initiatives help all voters, right? So
exactly,
we work for those people who need that kind of help, but it will help all of us eventually. So
we think so too. I mean, we're like I said, we're really excited about that. We just, I don't want to say we took a step back from moving that forward, but as we all know, we just came through and we're still in this year. So this last November election had a whole group of challenges.
Yes, it did.
That we all, came through, rose to the occasion, very proudly said we made it. All of our voters, we did our social distancing and we did our PPE. And even to the fact of when the election was over, we offered all of our election officials to come in for free testing. So they came in for free COVID testing, sort of to wrap it up for them.
I think it's fair to say this is an election we'll never forget.
Absolutely. It certainly is.
One for the books. So let me ask you, what advice as a woman in elections do you have for other women who may be interested in a career in public service?
Well, that has a whole range of, and I see the smile on your face, you see the smile on my face. And like you said, once you're bitten by this, I would venture to say it would be really hard to find a more rewarding career. You put in long hours, it's true. Stressful. I mean, I'll be the first one to say it's stressful, but it's so rewarding when you take that one phone call from that one person that is for us overseas and they've been able to vote. Here, we've taken phone calls from senior citizens that literally have their voices are choked up, that we sent a ballot to their home, and that, you know, they're getting to vote.
Right.
And that just fulfills you. And I think it's, you can enter the election world, and I don't want to say do as little, you know, but your prime job, the most rewarding job, goes back to when I stepped into it back in '88, and you see the faces of the people that are voting, and you realize how important it means, how important it is to them, and nothing's better.
It is fulfilling to have a career in public service, that you're there to help people.
Yes.
And, you know, you've obviously been very successful being in this job, because it isn't an easy job for quite some time. So thank you for all the years that you've put in. And I'm sure there are many more, hopefully.
Well, thanks, Christy. Again, it's very rewarding. And
it is a
rewarding
rewarding career.
I think it's baby steps. I think I really like the idea that as you enter the world of elections and into the department, that you see how it goes. You put your time in at the polls. You put your time in at early voting. You put your time in, even as our operations management, when you see the warehouse and everything that goes into it. It's baby steps. And again, you can avail yourself of so much more, and you get to meet the most amazing people.
That's true.
There's the other side of the coin. You get, it's stressful because you will get blamed for, and sometimes not so easy conversations.
Mm-hmm.
But overall, it's rewarding. It really is.
And so complex, you know. I mean, I think people think elections is very easy, but as you said, you walk into one of those warehouses and you see, you know, the equipment and the logistics that have to go into elections, and that's just the tip of the iceberg. It's truly an everyday job, and to keep the elections running smoothly is a never-ending job. Really, it really is not.
Well, it just, yeah, you know, the one piece of it is training, recruiting, and training poll workers. That's an ongoing all the time. And, you know, when we fill out your surveys, when we all sit and talk, that may be one of the most difficult pieces for the election.
That's right.
Because again, now here in Bexar County, the average age of our election workers is 70.5. And that generation looks at working at the polls as civic duty.
That's
and
right.
Pride. And it's fantastic. It's fantastic. And we're backfilling as we go. But again, it's going to take time to take the judges who have been with us for 15, 20 years and understand the process. And that's one of the challenges that is ongoing at all times.
And look, you started out as a poll worker and you ended up having a career in elections. So
exactly.
You never know what can happen.
Right. So, and I get to meet people
you
like
get
you.
Bit by it. So let me ask you finally, if you can remember, can you tell us about your first time voting?
Yes, we were in El Paso, Texas. My husband was in the service. We were assigned at Fort Bliss. And we got to vote at Andrus High School. It was a high school there in El Paso for the '68 presidential election. It was the Nixon-Humphrey election. And there were long lines then. Mm-hmm. And it just seems to, like I said, you remember those things. You look at those things when you're out and about, even now, visiting the poll sites, you get that feel. You get that feel.
Did you vote on a lever machine?
Yes, ma'am. It was a lever machine.
I did as well. Yeah.
It was the big shoop lever machines.
That's right. I remember going in there and looking at that whole, you know, all the little levers and the big handle and thinking, did I vote or didn't I vote?
Well, in those times, it's sort of like we knew we voted because once we hit that lever, the whole machine shook and made this huge
and the big curtain opened behind you.
Yes. So you knew you had voted.
That's right. Well, Jackie, thank you so much for joining us for this little chat today in commemoration of Women's History Month. And thank you for all you do down in Bexar County. And we look forward to visiting again soon.
Thank you, Ms. Christy. I really appreciate this. It was an honor.
Thanks.
You take care.
You too.